So it's really funny. I started out uh, as a journalist, writing articles for places like the Daily Beast and Insider, and all bunch of different places. And because I talk different, a little bit differently than most of the people that you see on TV and most of the people that you read in the papers, it was a very hard way of networking. And sometimes I would take and do stories that nobody else would touch. And sometimes it bites you in the ass, but sometimes you get it right. Well, for me, for me personally, it turned into journalism, turned into photojournalism turned into doing OSINT work, open source intelligence work, and working with some organizations that learning the private intelligence world, right? Which is a very sketchy world at best, but it's an interesting thing. I love open source intelligence. I love all source intelligence, but you're looking at signals and data and all this other stuff. I love that too, but there's a very big difference between collecting and analyzing that data and applying that data. And one of the biggest questions I get when attorney contacts me is, how do I analyze this data? Where do I find this data? How do I use this data to my advantage? I don't know. I'm not advising you. I'm not an attorney. That's your job. That's what you went to law school for. But I can point you in the right direction. And strangely enough, that actually means a lot to an attorney who is working, a capital case, who's working deep litigation, something like that. Being able to gather the intel. Let me tell you something, okay? And if you don't believe this, then you're naive as I don't know but let me explain this to you. If you don't think that the other side has intelligence operatives working for their advantage, whether it's a prosecutor's office or whether it's some big law firm or some big insurance firm or whatever, if you don't think that they have all source intelligence analysts working at their disposal, then you are a fool. And in order to defend or to hold your ground, you need somebody like that in your corner that can bring those skills and bring that knowledge and help you gather that information and then work with you to kind of synthesize that and explain this in plain English. That's what you do as an attorney every single day. My job is to help you do that. Sometimes intelligence, and this is not investigations, it is not. It's asking the right questions, doing the right interviews, asking the right questions during those interviews, knowing where to look for things. This is not investigations, it's intelligence and it's support. And you do this at the support of a licensed counsel, of a licensed attorney. So I work with attorneys directly. I do not work with individuals. I will not work with individuals or companies. I work specifically with attorneys, licensed attorneys, to help them gather this information that they need and to help them synthesize through this data. It's about, contradiction mapping is a big part of what I do. Finding the contradictions, finding the differences here in the stories, and, witness statements and stuff like this. This is all gathering this intelligence and then giving that to the attorney in a brief that they can look through and easily figure out how to apply that. Now, they're going to go back and they're going to verify all this stuff. They're going to ask a bunch of questions and everything else, as they should. I think a good attorney would. But intelligence is part of litigation support. And that makes what we do incredibly valuable. That makes what I do incredibly valuable to the licensed attorneys that I work with. It's not cheap what I do. It's not cheap, but it's affordable and it's very valuable, especially to an attorney who gives a shit about his job and who gives a shit about the outcome and the application of the law. And you know, doing their job the right way. Because I think that if the opposition has all this shit working in their corner, the attorney should too. And it's all about giving the attorney more tools to use. And that's what makes this whole thing so beautiful is I'm another tool that the attorney can use to make their job easier. And one of the biggest things that you can do to an attorney is give them time. You know, attorneys, like all of us, don't have a lot of time. If I take something, I clean it up, I synthesize it, I help them do something, I'm saving them time. Time is money, time is life. And a lot of the attorneys that I work with are not very wealthy individuals. They're doing the hard work of law. They're doing the hard work of law. And God bless them for it. And they need that support that somebody like myself can give to them. You know, a big part of this whole thing is understanding the supporting role to supporting attorneys. You have to know what the attorneys need. You have to know that their time is valuable. You have to know that their resources are very finite. They're very, very limited. To where maybe somebody sitting in a prosecutor's office or something like that may have many, many different resources at their disposal. To a small shop, to a small attorney, their resources are often limited. And sometimes they're doing the toughest work out there. That's where I come into play at for these guys. Well, like I say, it started off being a journalist, and then it kind of led into to having a deep interest because in private intelligence and being able to analyze things like ship movements and aircraft movements and stuff like that, right? Knowing how to look at things from a very different perspective. And that taught me a lot. Working with the private intelligence companies, that taught me a lot. Then I started studying applied psychology, and went in that direction there a little bit. And then I just realized that attorneys are people too, and there's a lot of great attorneys out there doing great things that you never hear of. And sometimes they're trying to climb mountains that seem to be impossible to climb. And if you just give him the right rope, he knows how to use it. Or she. Rope is a very, very strong thing. So is knowing how to use it. If I give you the rope and you verify that that's a rope and you know how to use that rope, you can do a lot of things with it.